If you're out and about doing landscape photography, which ISO do you pick? I bet you'll pick the native ISO of your camera, don't you? But what if you got low light and you have to pick a higher ISO? What then? Let's presume there's so little light that you have to pick ISO 1600. Would it be worth it? Of course, at ISO 1600 there's lots of noise, but what if I told you that can be fixed? What if I told you that there is a technique that can deliver pin-sharp pictures at ISO 1600 without any noise? That would be crazy, wouldn't it? Well, you're about to find out.
Let's first have a look at the unedited picture, which I shot at ISO 1600 because it was still dark and I had to squeeze the shutter time into a 5-second interval for my time-lapse video. At 200% magnification there is noticeable noise, not just in the sky, but in the walls of the castle itself too. In order to get rid of the noise, I pick 16 consecutive frames from the time-lapse recording and load them as layers in Photoshop. First I need to make sure that all these layers are aligned, or else I'll not be able to properly stack them. I then convert these layers into a smart object. There are a couple of stacking operations available for smart objects. I pick median stacking, which computes an average value for each pixel based on the 16 frames I provided. The idea is that a given pixel mostly has the same value across the entire stack, and that only some frames have their value altered by noise, as it is a random effect. So by taking the average, the values of those altered pixels contribute far less to the overall value of the pixel and get very close to the actual value, that is the value without noise. Let's have a look at how the stacking turned out. There's hardly any noise left at 200% magnification. The sky is blurred now of course, but that can be fixed later on. Here's a direct comparison, original image on the left and stacked image on the right. The gain in image quality is incredible. Let's push this a bit, increase local contrast and compare again. I can even pull the shadows all the way up and on top of that increase local contrast. The stacked image is still holding up. The same cannot be said about the original image. Zooming out to 100%, the stacked image looks decidedly cleaner. Now I need to restore the sky. So I head back over to Adobe Bridge, grab the first frame from my stack and add it as a layer to my stacked image. Next I make sure that both layers are aligned. This is crucial because there's a lot of detail on the turrets and failing to align these layers will be obvious. Now I can make a selection for the sky and refine it. By adjusting the contrast of the mask, I can carve the detail out a bit more. Also, there's still some detail that selector mask didn't catch on, so I need to fix that manually. I save the selection for later use and remove it from the sky layer for now. Then I turn the sky layer into a smart object and add a camera raw filter in order to use the tool for noise reduction. I don't need much detail in the sky, so I don't have to be overly cautious here. Finally, I reapply the mask and check the fringes, particularly the detail on the turrets. This picture was taken at f2 with a focus on the castle, so it's to be expected that the foreground is blurred. So I'll blend in the foreground from a frame that was taken at a higher f-stop and has the foreground within its depth of field. In order to ease the blending process, I'll first adjust the exposure. I add a gradient map that will serve me as a tripwire for clipping later on. Then I push the shadows slightly to the right, so all tonal values are within a safe range and the clipping warning disappears. Let's have a quick look at the foreground. The noise reduction didn't do quite as good a job as in the background, but that doesn't matter because there's strong blur anyway, which is why I'm going to replace the foreground. To that end, I pick a shot from much later in the time-lapse sequence, one that has a high f-stop and sufficient depth of field. This one here was shot at f13 and has a crisp foreground. Again, I load this frame into Photoshop and add it as a layer to the image I'm working on. Of course, I have to align it with the rest of the image as well. The alignment didn't go so well though, so I have to nudge the new layer into place by hand. Never trust the alignment tool blindly. Now it's time to select the part of the image I'm going to replace. There's no need to refine the edges. There's low contrast between the walls and their surroundings, and any stray pixels will not be noticeable anyway. They'll blend right in. Using a black brush on the mask, I can remove the people from the image and then start smoothing out the transition by reducing the opacity of my brush. I save the selection for later. Next I try to bring color and brightness a bit closer to what the original part of the image looked like. A bit of housekeeping is in order, I think. After stamping visible layers, I create another smart object with a camera raw filter and tone the exposure back down again. Lastly, I crop the image to get rid of the white borders I got from aligning the frames. Next up is retouching. I want to get rid of those tiny distractions and remove any blemishes I encounter along the way. I actually captured some stars in this image. I could be wrong, but this looks like Ursa Major to me. Anyway, I'd like to make these stand out a tad more. We haven't checked on our exposure tripwire in a while, so let's do that now. Apparently we have black clipping, or at least we've come close to it. Let's address this in camera raw now, by putting the shadows up as far as they'll go, and push the whites a bit further to the right while we're at it. Okay, that wasn't enough, but nothing we can do about it now. As we're going to make this image even darker, we need to make the tripwire work again. The only way to restore that feature is to lower the bounds for the warning. As already mentioned, I'll now turn the exposure down even more to get closer to the original look. Let's boost contrast in dark midtones a bit. In order to select just those tonal values, I use a luminosity mask. Now I'll enhance the illuminated parts of the castle by making them warmer while at the same time making the shadows cooler. We're on the home stretch. All that's left to do is some dodge and burn. I'll also add a vignette to enhance the focus on the castle even further. As a final step, I'll apply some sharpening for posting the image on the web.
Phew, that was quite a lot to take in, wasn't it? But it was totally worth it. So next time, when you got low light and you're forced to shoot at higher ISOs, like ISO 400, 800, fear not, because now you know what to do about it. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more of this content, please consider subscribing. Till next time. Bye.